Today we have with us Neha Arora, the founder of Planet Abled, and we will discuss the future of inclusionary travel in India. Thank you so much, Neha, for coming on Leading with Women.
My pleasure, Rahi. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Neha, let's start with what drove you to start Planet Abled?
So Planetable actually came out of my own personal experiences. Both my parents are persons with disabilities. So my father is blind and mother is a wheelchair user. And I could never go for a holiday as a child because of the inaccessibility that exists in our country. And when I grew up and also started earning, I was like, okay, we have more money, so it will solve our problem. But it actually wasn't the case. It was more like you travel 2,000 miles only to realize the place is not accessible, doesn't give you the kind of experience you would look forward to. And after a series of not so good travel experiences and a mob fight at a temple, I decided that this is a problem that needs to be solved, and no mainstream travel company is going to do that. So I had to take matter into my own hands and leave my corporate career to start Planet Able.
So, you left your corporate career. What were the factors that convinced you to take the leap from an employee to a founder, and what are those steps that you took?
I have been more of an like a experimentation person all my corporate life as well. I like challenges, and the moment the job stopped offering a challenge, I actually left that job. So I need to things that keep me excited enough all the time, right? So when I had been trying I have some failed entrepreneurial stints in the past. But after all of this was happening in the past, like the series of bad travel experiences that existed with my parents, the series of mob fights, that one experience actually was the tipping point where my parents said, we are not traveling anymore because it's anyway, it's never getting into a good experience. That got me thinking that what's the solution? And I realized are a lot of people who are not traveling for the very same reason or are facing similar challenges. I realize there's a market, but I need to convince myself whether it is a financially sustainable model or not. It was because I had retired parents and bills to pay and rents to pay, and I had to convince myself whether I can pull it off. So I've done like my groundwork for 2 to 2.5 years. I've sat at airports overnight, a few of them, counting the number of people that are coming out and how many of them are persons with disabilities, because India doesn't have any data like that available. Talking to concierge at the airport, the hotels, and the people in the travel industry, that how many people actually travel
Okay.
and for how long do they stay. uh, Reaching out to the disabled community, that what would actually be their dream travel experience and what are the various challenges that they face in various things that would actually be the game changer if solved. So once I was convinced that, yeah, now I know how I have to do it, it was more like an epiphany, to be honest. That when the homework was done, it was complete. Every day at office in Adobe felt like, if not now, then when? Nothing's gonna change in few years. So I was like, okay, let's do it, and I'll see one day at a time.
So, through all the research that you did and the homework that you did, what is something that you learned the hard way that you would advise other future founders?
Few of the things that I would say is, entrepreneurship is not an easy journey. Even if you mentally prepare yourself for the worst to happen, it would take you down below that as well. How much mentally you can prepare yourself. Also, I would say think about profitability right from the start. Account for your own work and your own time also right from the start in the cost that is incurring to everything that you are doing, whether you are creating a product or a service. The amount of effort and time that you spend, it has to be financially accounted for. because otherwise your whole margins that you work for, or the way you price your product would be wrong. And I learned it the hard way.
So you have taken the leap, you have understood your mistakes. Out of all those learnings, how has Planet Able scaled in the last 5 years? Did it meet your expectations?
Oh, yes. So honestly, I didn't start with many expectations. I just started with, that whole filled with passion kind of thing, that we need to change the travel industry for everyone and make it inclusive and make everyone travel. The first 3 years, I would say it did not scale up. And, right from bankruptcy to the worst of days that you can think of, it did happen. And I think it's part of the process when you're doing something that hasn't existed in the past. It has its own gestation period. If you're doing something that has no reference point, because there is no success in the past and only failures if it has happened. So you have to find a way that how you can make it work. So it takes a bit of time. It takes time to raise awareness in the industry that this is an important sector that you need to look at, and it's a lot of business potential that is going untapped. So that took a bit of time, but then, like as compounding works, after 3 years, things changed. Like, and then it took that, what do you say, the flight of profitability, breaking even, and people getting to know the name of the company globally. So it has been really overwhelming, the amount of love and kindness the universe has brought in. I never expected that this would happen. And it's not just the growth of the company. As an entrepreneur, you grow as a person too. And it's an opportunity to learn and live the best experience of your life and change the world for the better. I think I feel privileged that I got to do that. And yeah, it's still a long way to go though. So I'm excited about it.
Not to break your excitement, but if you had to pinpoint your biggest pain point over the last few years, what would it be?
Um, to be honest, there have been many pain points, but I think the biggest one has been the mindset that
Okay.
disabled people are not considered as paying customers. It's always linked to charity, or they are assumed that they would not like to travel, or they travel really. I mean, these are the kind of remarks that you get from the industry when you go to them and ask for, okay, I need an accessible place to stay, or I need you to make this thing accessible, or whatever. They're like, why should we make it accessible? Because, anyways, people with disabilities don't travel. Well, it's a catch 22. They don't travel because you're not accessible.
Yeah.
So it's the challenge has been to change that mindset, that this is a market that you need to look at, and also the to get over the hesitance that many disabled people have about themselves, because they have been conditioned all their lives that this is not something for us, and they accept it. They are like, okay, that's not something for us, let it be. To change that mindset, even convincing them that you can travel just like anyone else, it is possible. And even convincing their parents and families that yes, they can travel all by themselves. uh, that has been one big challenge. Another has been the infrastructure, which is not accessible in a country like India. Of course, that is. So to figure out to go to every destination, develop it in terms of accessible travel, and so most of the travel companies work like, you find a local partner and outsource it to them, and it works. We cannot do that. We have to go there, develop the destination, work on the tangible infrastructure part of it, plus the intangible aspect of it as well, like training and sensitization of the ecosystem, because people don't know how to cater to travelers with disabilities. The behavioral aspect is also a bigger challenge. The awareness, the ignorance that exists is huge.
So, do you see yourself doing this alone, or have you seen some competition appear in inclusive travel? So, how do you, if yes, how do you approach differentiating in a travel services business?
So, if I talk of just India, because we are headquartered in India, there have been a few travel companies that
Okay.
came up and are no longer there.
Okay.
Even some of the big giants came into the picture. Uh, they don't exist anymore. Uh, when they launched after like couple of years of our operations, because they saw the business and they came into play, I was, to be honest, I was overwhelmed. Okay, now what will happen? They have all the money. I'm just a small bootstrapped company. How would I survive? Because they'll all take all my business. But I think they actually developed the industry for the better because they spend money in marketing. But they could not deliver the services because the lack of understanding of disability and making it happen on the ground is what set us apart.
Hmm.
And I say it's more of a have been a privilege for me to have been born to parents with disabilities, that I understand how different disabilities can work in sync with non-disabilities as well, and what are the needs of various types of disabilities when it comes to traveling, so that most of the things come intuitively to me instead of trying to you know go and study about it. Of course, I had to put my effort and learn about the other disabilities as well and their needs. But that I think put Planet Able apart, that the understanding of the needs and to create solutions as per the needs of those travelers has been the game changer. So I think the biggest learning has been the inclusion aspects of the trips, because when I started and I did the first trip, for me, even though it appeared that it would be more convenient to focus on one disability or only persons with disabilities, I was like, no, I cannot choose between my parents, and I really don't want to it to be a separate group. Let's mix everyone together and see what happens, because that was the only way that seemed obvious to me to do the right thing. And what I realized was there were 22 disabled people and 20 non-disabled people that turned up for the first day trip, and the lack of interaction between persons of various types of
Okay.
disabilities, like the blind always most of the time mingle only with the blind, or it's only the deaf communicating with the deaf, or the wheelchair users communicating with having similar mobility impairment. They came and told us, I never realized that the other disabilities have also these big challenges. I always thought my challenge was bigger or my disability was bigger. But I think I was just fortunate to have been brought up by parents having two different disabilities. I was like, no one's challenge is bigger. It's just you all pre exist and you have your own set of challenges. And that's that when they told this as their experience, and they said, okay, we went slow, but then it was also a realization that why we went slow, and these are the challenges wheelchair users face, or like being told by a blind person. And the non-disabled people said, okay, I have been to this place 4 times before, but today it was a totally different experience for me, because when we travel, it's mostly visual scanning that we do while we're traveling. We don't get into the detailed aspect of it, or miss out on a lot of things. But today we realize, no, there's so much to this place which we had never observed before. And these people went into their communities and became inclusion ambassadors, sent more people to join on our trips, and even came back asking, I want to hire persons with disabilities. How can I make my office accessible? And the second biggest learning has been the COVID, because which has brought the whole travel industry to the halt and also gave us time to think that how do we impact 1.3 billion people with disabilities and help them in traveling. Because for how long you can work with temporary arrangements and keep on developing destinations until and unless the whole industry become inclusive, uh, the travel industry, the travel for everyone won't become inclusive. So whatever gaps that we had found out in all our years of operations, we decided to raise ourselves from just being a travel service provider to become a travel ecosystem
Okay.
enabler. That even though we will still do trips, but we will also let the industry become inclusive, the hospitality and the travel industry, that how can they enable themselves to be accessible for all types of disabilities and cater to them in the best possible way. And that is what Planet Able 2.0 is all about. That gives everyone the freedom to travel. Even though they cannot afford to travel with us, they would still have access to a lot of things that they can DIY themselves, their own trips. And the places, gradually, the places and services, we'll try to make them accessible for everyone.
Would you call Planet Abled a business which is primarily B2C or B2B? And how would you differentiate priorities between them?
So we are a B2C
Okay.
business in terms of, because the customer is always our focus. In terms of sourcing, also, most of the business comes from word of mouth.
Okay.
So it is direct customers who reach out to us. There have been B2B partnerships, and we are working more towards that. Because, of course, when we have to reach out to everyone and anyone across the world, we have to harness all the channels that are available. But yes, the priorities are different, especially because for a B2C, a customer just wants their needs to be met. And that is our focus also, that their accessibility needs are met. They have a seamless and a memorable travel experience. With a B2B, another layer comes in, that you have to meet the standards of a B2B partner, and they also have to meet our standards of service while they are selling it, because you cannot promise something and then not deliver on it, because this whole business of inclusive travel works on trust. Once they trust you, they become your lifelong ambassadors, and they will come back to you again and again. But B2B, there are two types of people who want to work. One, if there is a person with disability at the helm behind, they would understand the seriousness of it and the depth of work that goes into it. If it's a mainstream travel company, uh, they might just be wanting to, tap into the business potential without having the intention to do the hard work that goes
Okay.
into it. So we have to really, even with the B2B, find the right set of partners whom we can work with and whom we can trust, who genuinely want to make a difference.
Okay. Talking about making a difference, do you maximize social impact or profitability? And what have you done to design this trade off?
Good question. So I think the focus is both, and this, like I mentioned, I learned the hard way, that profitability has to be at the core, because here a lot of groundwork goes into it, and there is a lot of unexpected expenses that also comes in at times. If if your destination is India, of course in other countries it might be easier, but you have to take care into account the profitability and the social impact. They go hand in hand. We really cannot choose one over the another, and it can happen, and I think we are fortunate we have found the right spot for it, that we don't compromise on the quality of service even though it is expensive. So sometimes that means saying no to some business if the budget of the traveler does not meet the expense that we would quote them, that this is what the travel would cost, and sometimes their budget might not allow that. So that's a trade-off we had to choose for our own survival. As much as I would like to do and serve them, I really cannot compromise on the quality by offering them a low cost service, because at the end of the day, no one would remember how much it
Hmm.
costed. Everyone would remember the quality of experience that they had, and that has to be the focus. So, but with Planet Able 2.0, I think we would be able to cater to people who otherwise cannot afford to travel with us fully, like in an expensive way, but still be able to access some of the content and services that we create for them so that they can still travel.
Okay. So, a difficult question. Have you ever encountered imposter syndrome? You are neither part of people with disabilities community nor can you be called an outsider because of your parents.
I think sometimes I'm not. I won't say it's more of an imposter syndrome, but sometimes feeling that okay, I need to work towards it. I do not understand this,
Okay.
uh, because of course, like the working with the deaf or persons with autism, I had to do the work, and I was not part of the community. So I don't say I have had imposter syndrome, because I always went with an open mind. Okay, I don't know this, but that has to be done. So I'll do the work that goes into it to make it happen. And I would also like to add that whenever anything happens to the disability community, and it could be anyone of any types of disability, I don't feel I'm someone outside of it. It impacts me personally, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever you might call it, because it is as a whole. Yes, it impacts me and the work that we do. It is somehow ingrained into the blood, so to say. So I won't say I've ever had that imposter syndrome. It is me. So yeah.